The intended objective, to be completely honest, yes, it was a profitable, proposition, but deep down, I think I can say this now honestly, deep down, I wanted to prove that the diaspora, can contribute to the transformation of the country in ways that people hadn't thought about before, particularly when it came to capital, right? Mobilizing capital, investing in the continent for transformation. I prove that. I am unequivocal about that.
Yo, what's going on, Afronomics? We are back with another episode of greatness, coming to you with an amazing African leader. And I'm going to let my boy Sita go. Well, my bad. I didn't introduce myself. I assume you know who I am already if you've been watching. It's season 2. I'm Llewellyn Dixon, and
this is Sita Nambuya. But first, Llewellyn is talking about cutting that beard off.
Yes.
And I think we need to advise him.
I'm going to look at all 3 cameras when I say this. Okay, you ready? There are some brothers who rely on their beard to look good.
Llewellyn.
I am not one of them. I can cut my beard and look just fine. And if you don't like it, it don't matter, because I do. Doggone it. There you go.
You got to admire his confidence. It's Sita Nambuya, host of the Afronomics podcast.
I'm the main host. He's the backup.
Gotcha. Right. Just keep that beard, bro. We don't want to lose viewership. All right, so we got a great guest today, Mr. Eric Guichard, who is with us from Maryland by way of Guinea, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. All right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Eric. So I had the pleasure of meeting Eric at InvestFest years ago, and we just stayed in touch. And we had that connection because if you fly to Sierra Leone, a lot of times you may go like through Freetown and then through Conakry, which is in Guinea. So me and him connected about that and just stayed in touch, loved what he was doing on the continent and with the diaspora. So years later, we got this podcast, and I thought it would make sense to bring him on, and he graciously accepted. So a little bit about his background. He is the founder and CEO of Homestrings, a diaspora investment advisory firm. So exactly what we're trying to do, get the diaspora to invest in Africa. He's former World Bank portfolio manager and technical advisor. Before Homestrings, he was founder of Gravitas Capital, which does institutional asset management. And he's a University of Dakar grad as well as a Harvard MBA. Currently resides in Maryland. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast, Eric.
Thank you, Sita. My pleasure to be here. It's an honor to join you today.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're going to hear more about what you're doing, what Homestrings is doing. But before we get into the conversation about the business, we start off every episode with a segment called Wahala. So, do y'all say Wahala in Guinea?
It depends on the inflection
Okay.
in
How
terms
y'all
of the
say it?
meeting. So in Susu, yes, we do say that. It also, like, it's an exclamation point. But if you say it in Fulani, it could be sort of a religious thing. So are you, which ethnic language are you using to say the word?
The Nigerian context.
Nigeria. Oh, okay. Well, I can't help you there. I can only help you when it comes to Guinea and maybe Senegal, but I'm not sure that the Wolof use that word.
Yeah, I know we say it in Sierra Leone is Creole. I think I assumed it was Creole, but I know the Nigerians use it as well. I believe Ghana uses it. But
Okay.
in our context, it just means trouble or like nonsense sometimes.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, right.
Just a little lighthearted foolishness.
Yeah. So we started off, our conversations when we talk about the business side can be a little more, serious. So the
Right.
beginning is a little lighthearted, but it's not gonna be nothing too crazy. Not this episode.
No worries. I'm happy to mix it up.
Okay. All right. So I'll come up with the topics Llewellyn doesn't even know, so it'll be a surprise to him.
Oh Lord.
But this one is not too bad. It's not too bad.
But you know me, I side with the bearded, right?
So exactly. It's a brotherhood, man. You will never.
Absolutely. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon,
I'm bringing the snacks.
Really?
There you go.
Oh wow. Okay. I did not know that this is how that was gonna go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
See, you tried it. You failed. It's all right.
Okay. All right, so the topic for today is, if you wrote a book about your life, what would this chapter be called? And I want everybody to answer it.
Are you asking me first or Llewellyn first?
Whoever's ready to go first.
I want to hear yours first.
So repeat the question. If I were to write a book about my life, what would this particular chapter be?
Yes, what would this chapter be?
Like what's going on right now, or where I am right now in my life?
Where you are in life in
You ever
general.
seen Pursuit of Happiness, the movie?
Yes.
You know how
Yeah,
he
that's right.
said. You know how he would title. He was like this part is called whatever. Yeah.
Right. That's a good question. I would call this chapter chilling.
Chilling. Okay, I like that.
I like it.
Absolutely. All the hard work has gone in. I got these little gray things to remind me in the morning when I wash my face. The kids are out of the house. We're just, relaxing, uh, educating, advising. Yeah, this would be the chilling chapter.
Nice. I like that. I'm trying to get to that one.
Okay.
All right,
I
what you
like
got?
that too. I would call this. I got to be deep. I'm gonna call this the Renaissance.
What about you, Llewellyn?
I would call this the Renaissance.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
the
That's a good one.
Renaissance because I moved from Atlanta, moved to Maryland, started a whole new thing. I didn't know anybody in Maryland. I'm building everything up there, so it's a Renaissance. It's everything is new and it's dope.
Okay.
That's
Nice.
fantastic.
Everything is new and
That's
it's
really
dope and going up.
fantastic. It's those challenges are what bring meaning to life. You know what I mean? It's like, those are the defining moments, those challenges. People run away from challenges. I tell young people every day, look for challenges. Look to
Mm-hmm.
test yourself, look to push your boundaries. Because when you look back, in your 30s or 40s, I mean, those are the moments that shine, you know. And when I look back, I mean, I'm happy of the choices I've made. At the time, they sounded crazy, but your instincts know something that your brain doesn't know.
Yeah.
And when I look back, when I followed my instincts, I always was right. When I followed my brain, over analysis, you wind up not necessarily making the right decision, even though on paper it looks like the right decision at the time. But yeah, that's great. That's great. But you said you don't know anybody in Maryland. Well, now you do.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
look at
Yes,
that.
sir. We definitely got to connect when I get back then.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the wise OG has
All
spoken,
right.
man.
And already dropping
he
some
already
wisdom.
gave the sage advice.
Yeah.
How you gonna top that? What's yours?
Oh, I ain't trying to top nothing. I'm gonna be honest. This chapter is called "Just Keep Swimming."
Oh shit.
Oh,
Yeah.
good one. That's right. No, but I tell you something. I mean, that, if I were to count, the most difficult decisions in a young person's life. I mean, even at my age, well, is when do you decide that what you're doing is not going to work or is not going to get you to where you
Yeah.
need to go? That is one of the most difficult decisions because you're saying to yourself, well, I've been taught to be patient, to be persistent,
Yeah.
right? But when does persistence end, right? Because persistence doesn't always, lead to success. And there's no way for you to really, I mean, unless it's, complete catastrophe and you continue to dig a hole. But if you're persistent, if you're like one of those purists, this is a small failure, I'm going to keep on going. This is a setback, I'm going to keep on going. At some point, you have to decide, well, Maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to go
Yeah.
down a different route. And that is the most difficult decision to make because you don't know if your pivot is going to lead you down another path, and then you're going to have to put in the time to really feel like, you've been persistent down that road, or whether you should stay and you're missing opportunities. And again, there's no textbook that could
Yeah.
help you make that decision, right? This is where instincts, at least for me, where instincts, play an important role, an important filter. Like I used to trade actively on the markets when I was at the World Bank, and you learn that you have two sets of information. You have what they call macroeconomic quantitative analysis that gives you all the numbers, and you got technical analysis that gives you the charts. And then if those two signal in the same direction, you put the trade on. If they diverge, you don't put the trade on, right? But then I started using that same framework to make decisions in business when I left the bank. And I realized there was a third one missing, right? You got the quantitative, which basically is your head. You got the emotional, which is your heart. And the third filter, which for me is the judge of the three, is your instinct. And if your instinct aligns with your head and your heart, that is a winner. If there's divergence, you have to figure out why there's a divergence, but you don't move, you don't put the big bet on. And if it's just one, like if it's only your head and your heart and your instincts are diverging in different place, you know that you have a 50-50 chance of winning or a 50-50 chance of losing. So once you have that kind of framework in your head, that sort of helps. But what you're discussing, what you just raised, that issue, I think is a perennial one for most professional adults who are trying to make the right decision in their lives. Deciding whether to persist or pivot is one of the most difficult decisions that one could undertake. Just letting you know. I mean, you're on the right track if you're already talking about persistence.
Yeah, yeah, no, and comes after several pivots. It's been like
I know what you
staying
mean.
within the same realm, but like, all right, this isn't working, but I'm gaining traction here. Let's move this way, let's move that way. And it's been all instinct, and that's been helpful. I know a lot of people just in the industry I'm in that didn't even make it. Like they've lost their business. They've had to, they just got washed out the game. And I've been fortunate enough to make decisions years ago that have kept me, in a position to still be able to win, and just thank God for that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, congratulations. Perfect.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. But that ended up getting a
That was
little
A little
deep.
too,
heavy. A little heavy.
yeah.
Even before the coffee. What's up with that?
Right, right, man.
I
Yeah,
thought this
no,
was supposed to be lighthearted, man.
I didn't think y'all take it like that. I was expecting, but
I
y'all
mean,
took it
first of all,
there.
I be deep. He's an OG, so of course he's gonna be deep.
My title,
Yeah.
my title had an apostrophe. It was like chilling apostrophe. Yours,
Right.
yours, yours was like really deep.
Yeah, his
Yours was
was.
actually the deepest.
You think
Yours
so?
was the deepest.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway. Anyway, moving on. This is a great. I don't even know if we can call that Wahala, but we're gonna move on into the conversation.
Actually, what's the hold on? But before we do, what are the definite? I know you said the different people, types of people that use Wahala, in Guinea, but what do they use it for? Like when they're describing it, when they're saying it.
Well, there's sort of, I think that there's an Arabic root, right, to the word, if I'm not mistaken, as I remember. Wahala is a derivative of, okay, this is where I might not pronounce it correctly, but wallahi, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When you're talking to somebody and you say a truth and somebody says, oh, wallahi, as if to say, that is the truth you have said. Wahala, as I recall, is when people are bantering and someone says, you're speaking foolishness, or you're going down a road that doesn't make any sense. That's in the Soso, when people of Soso ethnic, are having a discussion in Soso. The Fulanis, as I remember, so there are two meanings. One is foolishness, as you're describing it, and then the other one I think is a religious calling, if I remember correctly. I don't remember that because it's been a while since I've spoken Fulani. But my brother and I speak Susu, frequently, particularly when we're trying to criticize people in front of them. We'll say something, you know, and so, and we know that the odds of them, we can say it in French, but then people speak French now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but then you say it in so the odds that the person that you're talking to or the person around there speaks so are like so small that we're cool doing that.
That makes sense.
My mom does that, and her sisters when they speak crew, they'll they in Sierra Leone we call it Congo Sa. When people are like they're gossiping or talking about you,
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
as
yeah.
soon we know as soon as they switch the crew, like, oh, they talking about somebody this here. And I think purposely they didn't teach us that because they wanted to be able to say
To say
things
stuff around
or
y'all.
around us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
In Liberia, we
absolutely.
don't say Wahala, we say Palawa, like plower,
Palawa,
plower. So you
Palawa.
say, or but well, I think plower is more like an argument or something. I don't know.
That's like
It's
plaba. Like in Sierra Leone, we say plaba, which is like that literally means like trouble or making an art.
That's in crew.
In Creole, it's plaba like you're
Oh, okay.
making trouble for somebody or like starting an argument or a fight or something like that. It's plaba.
yeah, it's like we say
Bravo.
plower, but it's also I've heard like it can be something that has to do with being social too. Any Liberians watching, if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. Judge won't come from my neck, please. I
Yes, yes,
beg.
and tell them to keep that beard too while we at it.
The beard will stay until I decide it's gone.
Yes, just
Okay.
don't ever decide for it to go. But all right, Eric, let's get
Back
into it.
to the real stuff. The reason
Yeah.
why we're here, meat and potatoes.
All right. Well, first, let's just kind of give us a run through of your background. You've done a lot from Guinea to Dakar to Harvard MBA to World Bank to running the world. I don't know if you got a secret lab somewhere. And you doing a lot. You're doing a lot. So give us that little background of how we got here.
Yeah, so people look at my resume and they think immediately that I was born in Africa. I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York,
Whoa, the accent
and
went away as soon as
my
he said I
mother.
went. The accent turned real American.
So no, yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly. No, my mother, who passed away, 5 years ago, was from Brooklyn, New York. She's an African American. Went to an HBCU. Went to high school in Brooklyn. Had got her master's at University of Wisconsin Madison. In the mid '50s, when it wasn't common for us to be making those kinds of achievements. She then got a Fulbright scholarship in the late '50s. And to teach, to learn about French literature, French and German literature. So she traveled to France, and at the time, you had the independence movements, of the early to mid '60s. She met my father, who was a Guinean, on a Guinean government scholarship in France, and then the romance, started. But she, I guess, in today's context, had the foresight of, to leave, Guinea every time she was pregnant to have her kids in the U.S. So both my brother and I are born in Brooklyn, New York, and then we grew up in Guinea. That experience was obviously very, very unique. It was, right after the independence, very fresh. Although the French, to be honest, weren't as gentle in their departure once Guinea opted for independence from France in the late '50s. And the country suffered from isolation. Luckily, a lot of the African intellectuals, rushed to some of the early independent countries like Ghana, Guinea, Nigeria, and and formed multinational cabinets. The Minister of Information was from Benin, or was then called Dahomey. The Minister of Culture was from Senegal. The Minister of Finance was from Nigeria. So, at the time, it was, big brotherhood. Let's go rescue these newly formed countries, because the colonial forces that have left were pretty ruthless. I mean, France literally burned down every single administration building that existed, not only in the capital, but also in the administrative sites inside the country. They burned all documents. They tore down, telephone poles. It was pretty ruthless. And to have these young, newly educated Africans return home and try to build something from scratch, try to turn political independence into economic independence, has been the story since independence. So I grew up in that kind of environment of revolution and all this stuff, trial and error, and luckily for me, my achievements and my brother's achievements really come down to our mother. If our mother was Soso or Fulani or from Guinea, we would not have had the same the same life. I probably would have gone to France to get a higher education after Senegal. Probably would have returned as opposed to working at an international organization. So there's that inflection point is critical. So yeah, so Guinea for quite a while under Sekou Touré, who at the time was an eloquent leader, tried to help the country move forward, suffered a lot of setbacks at the hands of the French, and then ultimately died in '84, leaving a little bit of a chaos, at the country. I left to go to school in Senegal. My parents remained. My father died when he was 46 in suspicious circumstances. My mother joined the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, but focused on Africa. And then I went on to school in the U.S. after a 3 or 4 year stint in Senegal. They had me redo my high school degree in Senegal because they didn't trust the education system in Guinea. That was traumatic. So
Wow.
I redid my baccalaureate in Senegal. Was admitted to the University of Dakar on the special exam. And then from there, set my sights on the U.S. Thanks again to my mother, who was working at the U.S. Embassy in Ivory Coast at the time. So I got a whole world that was open to me. Being born bilingual or multilingual, because I also, as I was saying earlier, speak Susu and a little bit of Fulani. I was able to, discover the U.S. or rediscover the U.S. So transferred to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, and then from there was set on going to business school because I thought, I could learn how to solve problems. Visited, I think, a handful of schools. Got extremely lucky. Got into Harvard Business School. After 1 year of working of graduating from college. Got even more lucky, got a scholarship from the World Bank. So I got a full ride during those 2 years, and then they offered me a job in the Treasury Department where I was managing, the World Bank's $100 billion in reserves alongside 18 other traders. And that was a defining experience. But again, being Guinean, it's very difficult for us from a character standpoint to work within strict confines like a bureaucracy. And so again, I set my sight to learn as much as I could. I did all the markets, traded all the markets from Asia to Latin America to the U.S. And once I got my experience in my pocket, I said thank you very much and left and set up my own company. And I recommend to most people that if you have an independent spirit, entrepreneurship is the way. It's the quickest way to wealth, that's for sure, but it's certainly quickest way to self-discovery in terms of really knowing your limits and really knowing who you are, and challenging yourself, and giving you meaning. So I did Gravitas for I think 15 years. The World Bank came calling. They took over the business. It's now the largest money maker at the World Bank. And then I discovered Diaspora, discovered remittances. And I said to myself, oh my God, Africans are sending at the time, sending 60, $65 billion back home. That's, 6 times the size of what the World Bank is doing in Africa. And I said, we have to find a way of connecting those flows to projects and small businesses, that can transform the continent. And so I decided to set up this company. I did all the research, figured out that crowdfunding was a thing, that mobile apps were a thing, learned about tech, knew nothing about tech. So I just got some people to help me understand the meaning of all that. And then next thing we know, we launched Homestrings as a diaspora, as the first diaspora investment crowdfunding platform. Ran into a whole bunch of problems with the regulators in the US. Quickly learned that the US wasn't propitious for doing crowdfunding of privately offered securities. Moved to the UK at the time. They were just emerging from the financial crisis, very open to fintech. They rolled out the red carpet, and that's where we relocated to. And did that for 8 years, very successful. We were very open about our strategy, so a lot of people were able to learn. And then from there, I took a 2 or 3 year sabbatical. Spent some time with the family, and then after that, a friend of mine called me to launch a private equity platform called Orango Capital. And so I did that for them, and then moved to the board. And then I discovered another opportunity in the Caribbean, which is growing fish for distribution in the U.S. And that's what I'm currently working on. In addition to, as I said before, being an instructor at Howard University, I did a case study for Harvard. I'm writing articles and reports and doing stuff like that. So that's my entire life in 3 minutes.
So that I have many questions and
Yeah.
observations. The first is you've done a whole lot. I gotta ask. You're in your 50s,
Yeah,
40s,
60s. I'm
60s.
62.
No way.
First of all, no way. Second of all,
Damn.
that's a life. That's a life of, even like what we were talking about earlier with Wahala, like pivoting and doing just new things. Like that actually gives me a lot of encouragement too, because there's a lot of stuff I want to do that I can do that I'm good at. And similar to Cedar's point, like I'm thinking sometimes maybe I need to just stick to one thing, but can't. You got to have
Yeah.
you're basically, you're giving us a glimpse and kind of permission to say it's okay to change, to do something else, to move forward, to make different decisions. But I also really love the boldness that you speaking about what France did to Guinea when they left, because I think it's important to put that in perspective. A lot of these newly independent African nations are newly independent within the last 100 years or less. The 50s was, I don't do math well, 70 something years ago. And the way that sometimes people paint history, they might take those pictures and put it in black and white or try to refer to it as something that's distant and far off, when in reality, some of the people who spearheaded those initiatives, who actually burned some of that stuff down, their kids are still living.
Absolutely.
And that mindset is still there. So I think it's good that you pointed that out, so people know like what has happened. And if somebody who is French and not African or black who's watching it, they can see like, hey, this is like this is terrible. That's an evil practice to do.
And then wasn't it recently that Emmanuel Macron from France was talking about, oh, you guys are ungrateful. I can't remember which country he was talking about, but
Yeah,
he's like, oh yeah, you're
yeah,
ungrateful. The French have done so much, and then you hear stories like that. It's like, well, y'all, you've always been the problem,
Exactly.
and they act like they feign as the solution. And it's good to see a lot of what was going on in the European influences being kicked out of some countries, because they've just been a burden. They've been a burden, and we all know that. But sometimes we look at some of the money, we look at the aid, and we put too much value in it, and not realize that they're really sucking us dry and taking out all the resources.
And it's like the perfect example of we're nice to you until you don't do what we want you to do.
Yeah.
We built your country, our country, whatever they call it, and then the second you decide you want your stuff back, okay, you can't have it back. We'll just destroy it and leave. That's the same mindset that they have now. So it hasn't changed. So thank you for
It has
highlighting
not
that.
changed. It has not changed. I mean, the same thing with the revisionist, history that we're experiencing today. I couldn't believe yesterday I was reading New York Times. They're taking down Colin Powell and Jackie Robinson from the Defense of, Department of Defense's, recognition wall. They're erasing people's names from Arlington Cemetery. People who put their lives out there for the country. And it's this thing of, well, we're in control. We don't have to coddle to minorities. We need to impose our belief, and that's going to be the conventional wisdom. It's the same thing that Macron was doing, that trying to tell people, oh, we've been supportive and helpful, and the military bases and all this other stuff. The reality is that everybody is serving their own self-interest, right? At the
Hmm.
end of the day, it doesn't matter the Chinese, the Americans, the French, everybody's serving their own self-interest. And I think it's important for leaders to understand the history, not just the independence movement, but even before that, even before slavery, and educate the population, so that that kind of knowledge can strengthen their identity and strengthen their confidence about who they are as as people. Guinea, I mean, Sekou Touré, with all of his faults, achieved at least one major, goal, and that was to unify the country into a single identity, Guinean. Yes, you may be of, Fulani ethnicity, socio-ethnicity, Baga ethnicity, Mandingo ethnicity, Kisi ethnicity, but at the end of the day, when the time was right, you were Guinean, and that identity, explained why France was never able to break down, Guinea, to subjugate Guinea to, to its will. Even after Sekou Touré died, the guys who came after, made sure that we were not going to be, another colony of, France. And I think, this new wave of young militaristic, rebels, if you will. I mean, I do have some issues with not using the democratic process to, to get into power. I think that's an issue. I think we have to move away from that. But you can see what the motivation is, and the motivation is, I think a good example would be Senegal, right? So, the new president, very young. He's a CPA. My understanding is by training, he worked in the tax department. They saw that decisions that were being made within the democratic process was not serving the people, that they were stagnating. And so they used the democratic process to get elected. And they're using policies that are fairly well thought out. We no longer need military bases. We can work things out ourselves, among ourselves. We want control of our resources. We want the price of our resources to be market priced. And we want further, integration. These borders are all artificial. I have family all over West Africa. I have, an aunt in Abuja. I have my grandmother was born in Freetown.
Yeah.
My aunts and uncles are in Senegal, where I went to school. So it's and I think people are, they're coming to the conclusion, particularly in the diaspora, that many of these changes need to be implemented by us, for us, and not wait for the great white hope to come with its policies of structural adjustment and financial reform and what all this other stuff. People know what to do, right? I mean, they know what to do. They're smart. Some of the smartest businessmen, in the world, are in Africa. there's zero resources, negative resources, and they've been able to achieve billions of dollars worth of worth. So I think the narrative, is shifting, and I think it's shifting for the better.
Oh, that's amazing. Like everything you said has been spot on. I want to go back to one thing that you said because we talk a lot about bridging the gap between diaspora, and you've embodied that, with Homestrings and all your activity. One thing you said I can't get past is you said the diaspora is sending back how much? 65 billion
That
in
was then. Now it's at about 125 billion dollars being sent. The majority of that money, to be transparent, is in some of the bigger economies. So it's Ethiopia,
yeah.
Nigeria, I think Kenya, Egypt, and again, that's including North Africa as part of Africa. But in sub-Saharan Africa, the bigger flows are going to basically three countries: Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, being the three big dogs on the continent. The Congo, I mean, landmass wealth, yes, but there's so much instability in the
Yeah.
DRC that it's hard to get them to rise up to their potential.
So,
And that's a debate in of itself. But yeah, so these flows, they come in several forms. They come in cash transfers. They come in the form of goods, in the form of services. But the cash component alone is significant, right? And the question is, how do you the Homestrings' proposition was basically saying, at the time, the conventional wisdom was, how do you get, auntie and tonton to take the money that they receive from, their nephews and sons and daughters abroad and invest that in infrastructure, education, and I remember at the time, I wasn't at the bank, at the World Bank at the time, the thinking was, well, maybe we can create a financial instrument that auntie and uncle can invest in. And I said to myself, if you knock on the door of my auntie in the village of Kindia or whatever, and you say you want to take her money that I sent to her so you can put it in some government bond, she's going to take her broom and she's going to beat the hell out of you, from the front of her door. And to me, the question was, it's not about addressing the recipient, it's about providing options to the sender, right? The sender is
yeah.
educated. The sender has been exposed to financial instruments. The sender is the one who's earning the money to send the money. And if you give that individual the opportunity to continue to send to his family, while at the same time being able to invest in opportunities that can be transformative to his country, he's likely to put, some portion of his remittances into that. And when we launched Homestring, it was a resounding success. It even shocked me. And to be completely honest, it scared me because I said to myself, I know, the speed of growth can destroy, a company. And so I was trying to slow things down. I remember one time I was invited to speak at I think it was a Ghanaian magazine on TV. I can't remember the name of it, and it was in London. And I arrived, and the two anchors, one was formerly from CNN, the other one was formerly from the BCC, very eloquent individuals. And they were asking me questions, and they dove into, well, if I have 500 pounds and I want to invest in something in Nigeria, how do I go about that? So I walked them through, a very short process of opening up accounts, getting verified, making their choices, going to the catalog, choosing what they want to invest in, and then paying for it either through their card or through wire transfer. By the time I finished that 20 25-minute segment, to walking outside to get my cab, my phone was blowing up,
Mm.
and I had about 100 people who were signing up to the platform, and it did not stop. It was so hot that my chief technical officer, who at the time resided in Atlanta, she called me. She said, "What did you do?" And I said, "I just left this Ghanaian magazine, and I walked people through the process." And she said, "This is nonstop. We're going to have to, gear up for these kinds of flows." So there is pent up demand in the diaspora to participate in the transformation of their country of origins. And I tell you one thing, one of the big things that we discovered over that 6 to 8 year period is that when it comes to investing, the diaspora is Pan-African, right? I may be Guinean, but if I see a Rwanda, oil refinery company that's generating 20% return, and I trust the people who have set this up, and the government is supportive, I'm going to put 500 dollars or pounds or whatever into that project, because I trust the platform, I trust the people who are around the project, and I want to invest in the positive narrative of Africa. And I think that's what we discovered, that when it came to investment, you will have members of the diaspora investing all over Africa if the transaction is credible, transparent, and if it generates, return and impact. You have to bring those two together. And that was, transformative to me. When it comes to philanthropy, then yeah, people are much more interested in focusing on their village and focusing on their ethnic group. That's fine. But when it comes to investment, transformative investment, we discovered at Homestrings that the diaspora is Pan-African. And that to me was one of the biggest findings of that experience.
So I think the conversation with Homestrings is exactly, it speaks to exactly the mission of even why we have Afronomics to begin with,
Exactly.
because it offers folks in the diaspora an opportunity to connect with and do real work in Africa, to build Africa, to build the culture. So and that's Africans and Americans alike, and
Absolutely.
Africans, or I
Absolutely.
don't know what they call them, like the ones in France and England and things like that, but the ones that look like us all over the world, everywhere,
Absolutely.
regardless of them having direct African connections. So that being said, if what in, I guess, 10, 20 years, it's a two-part question. What do you want to see Homestrings accomplish? What's that vision like? And then for those who are not directly connected to Africa, like their parent, they like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea. We know our families, our parents are from there. But for those who are not, who don't fit that description, how can they also get involved in Homestrings and what Homestrings is doing, so they can also contribute? Because part of it is I think there's something we all probably have in mind, making sure that Africa is a place where those who aren't directly from the culture per se can still feel like they have a home there and can build a home there and go there when the rest of the world starts to fall apart, as we see it happening now.
Exactly. No, no, excellent question. I think that Homestrings has achieved, its intended objective. The intended objective, to be completely honest, yes, it was a profitable, proposition, but deep down, I think I can say this now honestly, deep down, I wanted to prove that the diaspora, can contribute to the transformation of the country in ways that people hadn't thought about before, particularly when it came to capital, right? Mobilizing capital, investing in the continent for transformation. I prove that. I am unequivocal about that. And again, as I said before, as a team, we were very open about what we were doing, how we were doing things. We were not afraid of competition. We wanted competition because we wanted to create an ecosystem of diaspora investments. And again, we achieved success there. I can name at least 10 platforms that were launched subsequent to Homestrings doing the same thing, whether it's Cairo Angels, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in Nigeria, various platforms from industry specific, investing in property, industry specific, sector specific crowdfunding propositions. That has happened. I think we're happy that we were at the forefront of that, and extremely elated the fact that people picked up the mantle and essentially turned that into now highly normalized process. I think that and again, what Homestrings did after those 8 years, which I think ended in 2018 or 18, is that we pivoted and decided. Well, to be honest, the reason why we pivoted was because we could not, get into the U.S. The U.S. was, is a country of immigrants, and it was the crown jewel of Homestrings strategy. And our idea was we wanted to come into the US because not only do you have the 44 million Americans, but you have about 5 million, maybe 6 million Africans who are also here. And so this was the ultimate. And then you have the Friends of Africa also that you have to include, right? So this was the market, but the Security and Exchange Commission was just extremely regressive, to be completely honest. Obama passed what's called the Jobs Act, which was supposed to allow people of modest means the opportunity to invest in opportunities that are similar to opportunities that Bill Gates would invest in.
Mm.
And the SEC's argument was, well, the people who are not wealthy or not sophisticated enough, to understand risk. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I know a taxi person from Ethiopia who understands the risk of Ethiopia better than anybody on Wall Street, much less.
Mm.
So this, sort of patronizing way of condescending to retail
Mm.
investors, has basically been very, very obstructive of people's ability to invest in their home country in a formal way. Those restrictions, as a result of Obama's Jobs Act, have been sort of watered down, but you still have restrictions, right? I mean, they have this thing called Regulation D that allows you to do crowdfunding. There are caps on how much you can raise per enterprise. That you still have a lot of legal work that you have to do in order to be able to set it up, et cetera. Anyway, long story short, people are finding other ways of doing so. Nigeria, around the same time as we were making that inflection point, to move into propagating, diaspora investments, diaspora bonds. We did about 19 diaspora bond feasibility studies for everybody from all of the French-speaking African countries to Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Jamaica, Haiti, etc. And again, this is the evangelical inflection point where we were going out there. We wanted to make sure that there was an ecosystem that we would be promoting in terms of knowledge. Um, while we were doing that, the Nigerian banks and the Kenyan banks created what's called diaspora banking, where the banks were now going out to pursue deposits from the diaspora. And that was brilliant because that is the universal solution. Universal solution is for each diaspora to open up a bank in their home country because those banks are the conduit to investment opportunities back home. So now Nigerian banks are offering, the ability to invest in the local stock exchange. Some of them are giving Nigerians the opportunity to invest in other stock exchanges. That's happening, for example, in French-speaking West Africa, where we have the regional stock exchange out of the Ivory Coast. To me, that is a solution. If you have an account at Bank of America and you have an account at Chase, you should have an account at FNB, in Nigeria or whatever the bank is, the most robust bank is in your home country. That's extremely important in order to have access to vetted opportunities. So that to me is not only the present, but it's also the future of diaspora engagement. On the other issue, in terms of diaspora, I think that we're at a point where some diaspora are going to stay, right? They're going to stay, in the West or wherever they are. But then you have this group of diasporans who are now returning home and taking up policy making roles. And in the study that we have done, when you look at countries that have hit that inflection point between underdeveloped country and country on the way of becoming a first world country, you see diasporans making decisions as policymakers. So you take, for example, India. India was corrupt, untrustworthy, disorganized, whatever. And then Modi, who's a Gujarati, very successful governor of Gujarat, takes over as prime minister and has a plan on how to transform the country, how to unify the country through infrastructure, how to do financial reform to make it accessible, to people to create wealth. And the country has never been the same between 1994 and I'm sorry, between 2014 and 2019, when Modi was elected, India received between 50 and 100 billion dollars in additional remittances, right? And the financial reform allows people now to have mutual fund accounts to invest in infrastructure, to invest in housing, to invest in education, etc. Again, because the leader, was able to pull in the diaspora to create these changes. Same thing happened in Ethiopia when Abiy took over. Despite the fact that he was, sort of an in-house person, his vision and his plan was about transformation. And he was also very young. So a lot of the diasporans returned and supported his effort. Rwanda, same example. Kagame, the shift after the genocide, it's one of the jewels in terms of success. Nigeria, between Obasanjo's administration and Jonathan's administration, transforming the financial sector, consolidating all the banks. Five of these banks are listed on stock exchanges abroad because those decisions were successful. There was a time when Nigeria's bonds, the Naira bonds were included in the J.P. Morgan bond index. That's when Ngozi Iweala was Minister of Finance in both administrations. So again, the diaspora is a transformative, person, whether they send money home, whether they invest from abroad, or whether they become policymakers and then hopefully heads of state. So you're seeing that in Ghana, you're seeing it hopefully in Ivory Coast with Tijan Cham hopefully being elected president there. You're seeing that all over. That is the new wave. And then lastly, to your point about buying homes and stuff, that's already happening. Ghana had the year of the return 4 or 5 years ago, extremely successful project. People are buying homes, building homes. I have friends who are African American, have moved there, and they're now building homes and selling real estate. You're seeing the same thing in Rwanda. You're seeing the same thing in Kenya. Some of it in Nigeria. So that's already happening. And as you said in closing, as you said, while the world is falling apart doing stupid stuff, we're focusing on our own knitting. And you're seeing that, whether I travel to, Accra, or I'm traveling to Conakry, or I'm traveling to Abidjan. I just came back from Abidjan. I mean, I posted on my Instagram a picture of Abidjan, and then to make a point, I put one of the as a song. I put one of the Ivorian songs. People didn't believe me. They didn't believe that was a capital of Africa, right? And so that to me is the most important thing. And I think we're in the last inning in terms of Africa reaching its potential. You have Dangote, who just launched the largest refinery, right? One of the largest refineries in the world. That's going to be transformative. He's also expanding his cement. So, and then you got the African Development Bank, finalizing the interstate highway system in Africa, which was transformative in the U.S. here in the 50s, was transformative in Germany for a different reason, and transformative in Europe. It's going to be transformative in Africa. And that interstate highway, I'll be able to take the equivalent of Greyhound, call it the Leopards, from Conakry to Nairobi for over 6 or 7 days. I'll be able to take that bus, no issues, no problem, right?
Mm.
All of these countries are beginning to harmonize their passports, favoring African countries versus Western countries. That integration is happening, and I'm happy to say that I'll be alive when I'll be able to go and buy my orange leopard bus ticket in Conakry, and then arrive in Nairobi to see my friends there a few days later. That's going to happen in my lifetime.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Eric, for the conversation. We're pretty much running out of time now, but there's one question we like to ask all of our guests before uh
Yeah, before we wrap up. But
before we
yeah, no,
wrap up.
first of all, thanks for all the information. We love the episodes where we just have a guest that just knows what the hell they're talking about. And we just sitting here. We learning too.
We learning
Like
too,
we know
just
if
spewing.
we getting something out of it, the viewership is gonna get a lot out of it. So thank you for just dropping all that information. And the question that we wrap up with is for somebody who's their first time visiting Africa, What's one thing, one experience you think that they should get? Like, if you have a specific recommendation, like go to this country, go to this city, like you got to see this, you got to try that. Like, what would that be? That one thing for you?
Well, aside from being biased and saying you have to go to Guinea, I will say this: there is no favorite country, right? They
Mm,
each offer something very unique. There is there is one uniform thing. I remember every time I go to Africa, there's this. I'm not sure whether it's a spirit or whether it's the energy. I think it's the energy, maybe the energy and the spirit. Every time I get off of that passenger ramp and I get on the soil, there's something transformative that happens in my cells. I literally feel safe, would be the word.
yeah.
I feel safe. I don't know what it is. And I think this happens to everybody because, here we're on pins and needles in the US. It's all about
Yeah.
survival. You don't know when ICE is going to knock on your door. You don't know when, somebody's going to take something away from you. But you go home, and as soon as you breathe that air, there's a sense of safety. Spirits are telling you, don't worry, you're home. African Americans have I took my cousins to Senegal to see the slave house, and it's the same thing. There's an emotional relief that happens to you. That's just the beginning. Then there's all business opportunities, connections, the food, the music, the easiness of life. That all comes, and then the safety net. You cannot arrive in Africa, in any country, let me say this, in any country, and say you don't have a place to go to eat. At 12 o'clock, if you're walking around the street and you happen to see somebody eating, he's going to invite you into his house, onto the floor, with a spoon or with your hand to eat the food that is being served in that family, in that house at that time. You tell me a country outside of Africa where that happens. You can be in Paris, you can be, in New York, you look at somebody who's eating and he's covering his food. That is the difference. And I urge any African American, you know, or even African who's been here for a long time, go back home. Go back. Whatever home is for you, go back. It will be transformative. Those are my last words on this show.
It's a great way to end.
Great way to end. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you so much, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for the for having me and for having the opportunity, and also for appreciating my beard. I'm 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 still on that.
One day I'll get to the salt and pepper like you. I got a few coming in right now.
Oh, you got to care for them. You got to care. They have an impact, though. I tell you, you got to be careful. It's like a superpower.
Got you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, everybody, that's another episode of Afronomics with Eric, Homestrings, and all the dope stuff he does. If you are in the diaspora, if you are anywhere, please go ahead, tap into Homestrings, tap into Eric, find out what you can do. As for now, we'll see you with the next episode. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, your best friend, tell somebody in the diaspora, tell somebody in France, in Guinea, say it in Fulani, say it in Susu, say it however you want to say it, but just tell somebody about Afronomics. We out, y'all.
Peace.
Absolutely. Thank you.